Hello everyone, it's Grungy Sponge here, bringing you part 3 of 3 of this Rush Valparaiso gameplay. It is not so much a tips and tactics video as just some commentaries that I've cut together over these 3 parts. Last time we talked about the whole Disney LucasArts fiasco, and today I want to talk about a new series that I'll be doing on YouTube. So this series will be called Joining the Conversation, and really it's about just that, is adding my 2 cents to sort of a bigger conversation started by the larger YouTubers. One thing in particular I was thinking of is doing like a weekly reply to the Painkiller Already podcast that happens on Saturday. If you don't watch it, you definitely should. It's a fantastic podcast. I'll put a link in the description to the most recent episode. So what I was really thinking of doing is giving myself an opportunity to respond to the the topics that come up in that podcast, and also giving my subscribers a chance to do that. So as far as how the mechanics of that would actually work, I was thinking something like this. By the way, feel free to leave comments talking about how I might improve this process, streamline it, etc. Maybe put some social media integration into it, or any ideas that you have like that. Anyway, so here's my thoughts on how this might work. Is the podcast, the Painkiller Already podcast, comes out on Saturday, right? So on Saturday, my subscribers would have a chance to watch it. Think about it, mull it over. On Sunday, they could leave comments on my YouTube videos and just sort of share what they think. And on Monday, I would come up with an episode of Join the Conversation where I would talk about my views on what they talked about and some of my subscribers' views as well, as long as they're articulate and not like fuck Kyle or whatever. So by the way, fuck Kyle. So anyways, I just think that would be an interesting idea and a way to contrast our viewpoints. And the reason I chose Painkiller Already in particular is, first of all, I disagree with a lot of what they say. I like all of them as people, but I disagree with a lot of the things that come up during that podcast. I just think, myself being from the West Coast, them mostly being from the East Coast and the South of the United States, I just think we naturally have differing viewpoints on stuff. So I think there's going to be a lot to talk about there. For example, the gun control debate that happened on this most recent episode. Here, I'm gonna lay out for you sort of how the conversation went. Basically, everyone agreed that different kinds of furniture and banning like full auto mechanisms on guns and stuff is really not that effective. On rifles, I should say, is really not that effective in reducing or eliminating gun death in the United States. And I totally agree with that. I think that's accurate. And they cited the statistic that most of the gun death in the United States is not caused by rifles, but rather by handguns. And I felt that they sort of missed the point of that, which is like, all right, so rifles are not as big a deal, but what are we going to do about all these handguns that are floating around the United States? They didn't really talk about that at all. And I think the answer really is regulation. And all these Democrats want to be regulating our guns. But really, it just needs to be harder for people who are insane, as most of the people who do these kind of shootings are, usually paranoid schizophrenic, haven't been, the young guys who haven't been diagnosed, and the steps haven't been taken to stop them, really should have to go through a more rigorous application process in order to buy a firearm. It shouldn't just be a stop off at Walmart to buy a Remington 700. It should just be a process where you have to maybe take a class for firearm safety, or do something where at some point some human is going to realize that this person is not in the correct state of mind to be owning this extremely deadly, well, they always call them tools, but this extremely deadly object. And that doesn't seem to be something that most people have a huge problem with, is a little more regulation. I think most of the vocal opposition to that sort of teaching people to be responsible, to not have their guns stolen, because most of the guns that are used in the proceeds of a crime are stolen weapons. This kind of education of people is really not opposed by most gun owners. Most gun owners would be delighted to have a more educated population that owns guns in America, and a safer population because of this increased regulation. It's really the industry lobby that, the NRA, that doesn't want that to happen, just because it's going to be harder to sell the same volume of guns if every time you have to buy a gun, you have to prove that, A, you're sane, B, you're trained, and C, that, you are a responsible person who's capable of, complying with these laws and ordinances and things. And I just feel like that's a reasonable thing to ask of people who are going to own something that is so potentially dangerous to human life. So anyways, back on topic, the debate over high-capacity magazines that, Wings brought up a point that, he just doesn't want to reload as much when he's target shooting. Well, the fact of the matter is, high-capacity magazines really do aid people who just want to fire and, just kill a lot of people. Because, for one thing, most of the people who are doing that are insane, and they don't have a lot of training or expertise in terms of how they really go about their shooting. I mean, of course there are exceptions where, there are military people who it really doesn't matter whether you give them, 10 or 30 rounds in a magazine. They can reload in 2 seconds flat. It's, it's easy for them. But people who haven't trained and are in this high-stress situation find it a little bit more difficult to just go crazy and rampage shooting. So I think it's good to restrict their ability to do that. And really what I found sort of disturbing is that neither Wings nor Kyle nor Woody really seem to grasp the full deadliness of a firearm in terms of getting shot. Like, oh, it's not a big deal. Like this 5.56, it's a little bullet. But okay, so here's the difference between getting shot and getting stabbed. When you're shot, the soft tissue around the area where you're shot liquefies and turns into something that is just gross and disgusting, and furthermore just doesn't help you survive. It doesn't do its job like it's supposed to. And a knife wound, like, you get the same, depth of penetration, probably more, depending on the size of the blade, but you're not going to get that effect. So there's a much higher survivability of stab wounds than gunshot wounds. But anyways, this is really just an example of the sort of commentary that I could add to a Painkiller Already episode. Hope you guys liked it. Goodbye.